Hello, Helen McNab of ScorePlus here to introduce our advanced scorecard building seminar, Building Better Scorecards. Here is Gerard, recognised leader in scorecard modelling, to tell you what the seminar covers. This is Gerard in action before COVID prevented us from delivering class-based training. It's all now being delivered online.
So, the goals of the course. There are three legs to this course. The first one we want to talk about is why. Why do companies invest so much money in building models, in using models? Okay? What's the business case behind it, and how much difference does that make to the way in which we actually build models? So how do we make sure that we don't lose sight of the business objectives? And that's what I'm going to concentrate on very largely in the first section. Okay? At the center of the course will be a certain amount of mathematics. We do this partially for nostalgia, because most of us have studied mathematics sometime in the past, and this reminds you of stuff you did in university. But there's also a business reason. It's that I want to give you a set of tools, a toolbox that you can take away and use in different contexts, like on LGD models or in all kinds of different situations. And to do that, you need to know the tools. You need to be sure of how the tools work, and therefore be aware of what you can do and what the potential pitfalls or limitations are. Okay? And so as a result, it's important that you are very familiar with what underlies the tools. And so I want you to be able to use the tools creatively and not just follow a recipe book. So for that reason, we're going to explain, particularly tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be the toughest day in terms of the mathematical content. For that reason, I'm going to try to explain exactly why we build scorecards the way we do. Okay? And in particular, the ideas behind logistic regression. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about neural networks and stuff like that as well. Okay? But we'll go right through the mathematical stuff. We'll even prove the odd theorem here and there, just for the fun of it. But you should go away feeling that you really understand how all of this stuff works, and therefore you can push it to its limits. Okay? Maybe even a little bit beyond. That's pillar number 2, or leg number 2. The third one is that there's a craft aspect to model development. Okay? It's like carpentry, for instance. Okay? If you want to have someone who builds you a table, okay, you can get a good carpenter, and a good carpenter will build a good table. How would you know it's a good table? What are the properties of a good table? Steady. Yeah, and in particular, it would be steady. Why? Because you should be able to get the 4 legs on the ground all at the same time. If one leg is slightly shorter than the other, it's not going to work. Okay? The wood should be well finished. If I run my finger along my thumb along like that, I shouldn't end up with a splinter in my thumb. Okay? That's good workmanship. Okay? So how do you learn good workmanship? How do you become a skilled table maker? Practice. And in particular, where do you get the practice? You work as an apprentice, okay? You don't go to university and do a master's degree in table making, okay? You learn by doing, and you learn the practices that you learn from sort of whoever teaches you as an apprentice, whomever you work with as an apprentice, who learned them from someone else, who learned them from someone else, and there's a chain maybe going back centuries in some cases. Well, there's a certain aspect of that to scoring as well. Okay? And like any craft like that, and that means that there are ways of doing things which don't necessarily follow directly from the mathematical principles or from the business case, but which have arisen as conventions. And it's convenient because it means that everyone is doing the same thing. The conventions may be arbitrary. We'll give lots of examples of this later on. But it's also important to question, why are we doing things the way we do? Is this convention actually still useful? And we'll see later on in this section that there are all kinds of things that are very commonly done in the way in which we use models, which were derived to deal with particular problems in the 1960s, 1970s, and which don't actually make any difference anymore. And yet we're still doing them. This is, despite its image, an extremely conservative industry. Why? Because we're dealing with people, non-technical people, who are at the limit of their understanding of what's going on. And so we're trying to get something which will actually fit with the business culture. But that says that lots of times we could make things significantly better by saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense anymore. And one of the things I want you to do is to question the way in which you're doing your job and think, could I have a better business impact? Could I be more rigorous? Could I have something that's more robust, that will work better over a longer period of time by throwing away some of the old stuff? And so like any craft, the craft evolves. Okay? remember working with a builder when I was doing up my apartment around 10 years ago, and who told me that right angles on walls, for instance, were invented sometime in the 1990s. Why? Because that's when they got the laser things that they could use to measure. And before then, any building before the 1990s, the angles on the walls are all going to be approximate, and square tiles are never going to quite fit, for instance. Okay? And so it's the same thing for us. We now have better technology. Are we actually driving that technology, so neural networks or whatever, to get the most mileage, to get the best impact that we can? And again, you're asked to be innovative, and you should be able to introduce new techniques, new ways of thinking about what's going on. Okay, tying all of these things together is the idea that we want to understand all the steps involved in scorecard building. We shouldn't be doing stuff that's superfluous. Unless it's adding value, it's a waste of time. So we need to be able to justify everything that we do during the model development.
So to summarize why attend this seminar, you'll be given all the mathematical techniques required for building scorecards. But of course, successful scorecard building requires more than technical know-how. You need to understand how the business works. So as Gerard says, he goes beyond that recipe book. He helps you build scorecards that match business need to deliver models to maximize return on this investment. Where can you find more information? It's all on our website at scoreplus.com. You can register directly from the website. And if you'd like more information, do drop us a line to training@scoreplus.com. We look forward to welcoming your delegates to our seminars.